All things Aussie hoops and NBL fantasy. 3 blokes catching up over a can of 3. So many things that we cannot wait to see. As McDowell wiped up the keys, will Suarez be raining threes? After Brisbane said no Franks, the 36ers said yes please. They chose a second serve of Randall as United win a sweep. We think Walton's hard to handle. If Doyle rules, they're hard to beat. We love some Tucker. Warden Burgers got the lot. There's no cheese, but there's big sauce, and now Bangers gets the shot. Can a mango pick and roll fill the gorge-sized hole? Or do they need a lift breeder to restore their heart and soul? The Kings can focus on the books, so long as their man Xavier cooks. Will there be Magnay regret? Does R. Kelly fly with Majet? Will Thomas be a tank with Manic and LT? And I do beg your pardon, but we rather like Bradley. Cleveland, this is for you! We want more of the same from 22.
G'day listeners, you're back with Benny, Banksy and Boydie, the basketball blokes dribbling all things Aussie hoops and NBL fantasy, although you'd be mistaken to think that this is just the Benny and Banksy show this week.
No, of course
Getting pretty
not.
close.
That's what some people have accused it of being. And that's what you'd think I'd be pretty happy. I'm actually pretty frustrated this week. I want to set the history straight and stop some of the slander that's been going on. Look, Banksy, firstly, just finished round 2. Congrats for not captaining Will Magnay in round 2 like last year.
Bit of a change-up.
All right. Look, we've got lots to get through. We're going to get onto the review right now. Here is something that is the longest intro, unnecessary, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Has the Oracle lost his touch? Let's find out in this week's NBL Fantasy Round Robin.
First part of the history lesson, the Oracle.
Yes.
Introduce yourself. Why are you called the Oracle? Give us your credentials.
Why am I the Oracle? I think because it was probably because I finished in the early days of this podcast, this being our 5th season, I think. For the first 3 seasons, I sort of had sore shoulders, I guess is probably the best way to put it, from carrying you two lads, basically. So I think top 100 finished, then a couple of top 20 finishes in a row where I was in the top 10, but decided to go for broke in the last couple of weeks, and it just didn't pan out that way. I think I got to
for the biscuit.
Grizzlied 1 year, and then I can't even remember what I did the second time. Something stupid.
That's right. Mate, we've got lots of new listeners, apparently, based on the fact that no one knows our nicknames quite yet. You'll get there. But, like, seriously, you were the man on this podcast.
I was.
I definitely vouch for that. So how did you go this week?
But not that flash, unfortunately.
The touch is lost.
I mean, I've got the COVIDs, so maybe I blame that this week.
Definitely.
Still feeling a bit shizen, so apologies for my nasally voice, although my voice is normally fairly nasally. And if I say anything outlandish, like, Banksy will finish outside the top 200 or something crazy like that, then don't listen to me.
Real silly behaviour.
625 I ended up with this week, so Scheisenhausen. My biggest mistake, I guess, this week is I unfortunately traded in to Sean Thomas for Perth, and obviously went down 3 minutes into the game, not even, and had a 6 for the first game, and then obviously sat out the second game, and I had him as a starter. So that
I just realised that's another curse.
You can't predict injuries.
No, you can't predict injuries, so it's just the way it's got to be, little darling.
And definitely felt for you, Boyd. I saw him go down, and I knew you traded him in, and there's not much you can do.
It was a bit of a point of difference because I was
sinking feeling.
Well, I was already a bit behind you guys after the first round, and so I'm like, you know what, I'm just going for a bit of a point of difference. And unfortunately, it didn't
pay off. No,
but that's okay. These things happen in fantasy, so now you've got to get back up and got to try and build it for next week. So I'd really like some news on him. And Perth were really good, I think. They even announced it the day before. I mean, not that it mattered because he was already locked in. And they have the Friday night, the second game of the Friday night doubleheader this week. So I'd really like an update before the round starts, if possible.
Well, hopefully you get it, mate. I was the average bloke this week, and normally that wouldn't make you very happy. But I'm spewing. I'm absolutely spewing this week. So I am.
Is this guy top 5?
I'll get to that. Like, I'm stuck in the mud, right? Essentially, if I had to pick Lockie Dent over Madronya, I'd be really, really happy with my team. I'm not going to be able to fix it.
Round?
I would have been pretty close. But look, I finished 10th for the round, right?
As in overall, by the way, we're talking, but yep.
Yeah, so I finished 10th for the round. We're in about 6 fantasy leagues. Now, I'm obviously the average bloke, so someone finished above me on this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But not only did I not play Banksy, I still lost 3 of our 6
No, you did not.
fantasy league matchups this week,
Wow.
finishing 10th in the round.
How do you
So
we
I
had
played against...
with 3 people other than Banksy ahead of in our fantasy leagues ahead of you. Crazy.
Correct. So massive, I guess, props to join our fantasy competition, but like I couldn't get even that little bit of enjoyment out of it. Now, what the other things I see is, you know, on the Discord chat board here, a familiar name up the top. I just feel like for those new people, I just need to play this, okay?
Hello, blokes. Liam Santa Maria here. Merry Christmas. Hope you had some good times with the family. What kind of bizarro world are we living in? Banksy is leading the planet in NBL fantasy rankings. I had to refresh like 3 or 4 times just to try to make sure that was correct.
This is a new phenomenon, guys.
This is
Familiarity.
a new phenomenon.
Like,
That's
outside
all
the
Banksy.
top couple of
Banksy.
hundred previously.
Yeah,
But
that's it.
Banksy, have your moment again, mate. Mr. Familiar, Mr. Second in the world. How'd you go actually by the week?
Yeah, I don't know how I've done it. So overall for the week, just looking at the rankings here, so I was 3rd for the week. So there's obviously a couple of teams that were better there. But that moved me up from, I was 200th overall last round, moved me all the way up into 2nd. So last year it was unfamiliar territory and back up there again. But it's early days. I was clinging to that one spot. Overall, watching last night's game, I only had Wardenberg on the bench, so it was a tough feeling watching Cotton and Travers play and not wanting them to score and hoping they were rested in that last quarter. But
I need to vent.
Partway through the last quarter, I just got overtaken.
Wardenberg. Old Ronnie McWardenberger.
I knew you were going to do this. I knew it was coming.
He's gone. He's no longer in my team. So I went and had a look
isn't
at...
he?
I went and looked... I'm playing Spacey, right, who beat me in 2 of the leagues. And I'm happy for Tom Hirsch to invite us to this experts league, but I didn't realise I'd be playing up against the damn astronaut, for Christ's sake. So I logged on at half-time, and the scores were level. Wardenberger's going very well. I'll watch the second half of this. I was just going to give it a miss, but I'll just see Sam Wardenberg get his 1 point just to, you know, give me the victory for this round. I'll enjoy that. -1 for the second half for the Wardenberger. Gone from my team. I just have to declare my bias. If there's any questions about cash cows, Wardenberger is on my black book, man. He's gone, and I will be completely biased for any discussion on him.
And that's his punishment. It's pretty rough going as well, Benny, because I was thinking watching that game, the game was over at halftime. I thought they're going to give the Burger plenty of minutes in this second half. And
He missed a wide open layup.
That's right.
That play right there cost you the win.
It did. Now, that was a mental injury for me, but we got Dr. Boyd to go through the actual injuries.
The injury report with Dr. Boyd.
Yes, and there's a lot going on here. So once again, there's been calls for Dr. Boyd to have his own show. Haven't got the funding quite in place at present. Still some works in the go. Some returning players, Jonah Antonio for the Cairns and Jalen Galloway returned. Some new injuries, though. Jay Robinson for the Hawks, torn meniscus, likely out for the season. Replacement import on the horizon, apparently. And that's what we've seen with Lockie Dent. rise to stardom, I guess, in the last couple of games. To Sean Thomas, already mentioned with that ankle, unsure whether he is back this week. Need some news there. Corey Webster missed the second game of Perth's double this round with some personal issues, apparently, some family reasons, something along those lines. So hope all is okay there with the Webster family, and hopefully he's back this week. But no news as yet. Boali Bale's still sitting out with that missed ankle for the Kings. And I guess some little one that's sort of come out of, it hasn't been formally notified or anything, but Will McDowell-White is, well, as in Liam Santamaria's words, basically on one leg at present for the New Zealand Breakers, which is interesting because I think we all had him in our side this week. Is that right?
I brought him in.
Yep, I brought him in as well after I was going to have him from round one. We talked about that last pod.
So it was verified by two sources. So Liam did say that he's on one leg at the moment. And we had Dennis on the Discord chat talking about how they were working on his one leg. So that's it.
Cramps or something along those lines.
Was it cramps? That's what he thought it was. That's what he thought it was. But
some sort of injury to a leg, and it's causing him some discomfort by the seams of it.
Not good heading into a double.
There. No, a bit of a red flag there. Certainly one to watch, and if you have him, definitely one to watch. They have the first game of the round. No, they don't. They're not on till Saturday, so a bit of a tough one there.
Decisions to be made there.
Players we received updates about. So Sem's got about, seems like the whole roster coming back almost this week. So Rowdy Brokoff is expected to be back. Trey Kell will play. He's under no minute restriction, but it's all fitness based. So it depends on how he goes, I guess, during the game. But he will definitely be back. Now that will have some major fantasy implications. Oh, how am I going?
Implications.
Implementations. This damns COVIDs. Madut, Adnan maybe, a couple of those guys, even Foxwell.
To be discussed.
And maybe even Tarangi, if you've got a look at there. So I think we just talk about that a little bit later. Shai Ely still there with that concussion now. It's been a while now, because if you remember, he missed all of the blitz with it. A little bit of a worry with these concussions when they go on this long. So definitely a big red flag there. Melbourne are just starting that run of doubles. So yeah, one to watch there.
XRM.
With minute numbers. Yep, correct. XRM be the main recipient of that I would think. Still out for a little while, Gary Brown for Sem. Possible for round 4, they're saying, but not too sure at this moment. No idea. We've still got Terrell. We've still got one beer in hand. We're not sure what's going on with Tara Harrison up there in Brisbane, but that logjam in the bigs there is a bit of a worry anyway. Greeter and Peatling still are those long-termers we've been talking about for ages. I think that's it.
Failing to plan is planning to fail. It's time for the Schedulizer.
Now it's Melbourne and New Zealand week. Melbourne, 5 straight doubles, and as we know, 9 doubles over the next 10. So by far and away the best schedule basically of the season, starting for Melbourne there. New Zealand, 3 straight doubles and 6 over the next 7. So they're the teams that you're likely wanting to be targeting with your trade-ins. Sydney, of course, have 2 more straight doubles before you basically need an exit plan as they taper off to a bunch of singles. Interesting one for mine is Adelaide. Obviously started the first 2 rounds with buys playing the NBA games, of course, but 11 doubles as a result over their next 14 rounds. You could basically trade in some set and forgets there. But what's interesting is we haven't seen them. Will they be jet lagged? They have the single next week, so can we wait a week to see how their NBA stats transition to the NBL in the season proper? I guess we'll jump into a question we had there, because there isn't many other Adelaide questions. Lato's Legend sent in thoughts on the Adelaide guys, especially Randall. It's one I've been considering this week, boys. What are our thoughts on looking at the Adelaide guys like Randall, or waiting a week or 2 before their doubles kick in?
I know I'm taking a look personally. I had initially, with my $1.28 million in the bank, planned on getting Antonius Cleveland in, but
That's a fair kitty.
But I've got a destiny trade on the cards, so I can't go against that now. So, we obviously rate highly the players, but they're all very expensive. Macca we love, Franks is great, Cleveland's amazing, but they're so expensive compared to the new imports they'll be coming up against.
Yep.
Personally, I'm having a look. Brody, what do you think, mate?
Yeah, I'm a bit the same. I am definitely having a bit of a look. The two expensive guys, I think I'm not going to have enough money to do it. But, all things looking good, they look like they're running amok. So even Macca's an interesting one for me. Did put up some decent numbers on their NBA games as well. We know he can put up points in this league, fantasy points-wise. And he's got more a team around him, so I think his assist numbers are going to be really good too. Does he score enough now? Who knows? But he always gets the rebounds as well. He's one of those guys that's very active on the boards for a smaller guy. But what's he starting at? 1.2, I think it is, something along those lines.
1.4, man.
1.4.
1.4 is he? Oh, I didn't realize
He's pricey. And I think that's the thing for me is we saw what happened with the rest of the league after round one. It looks like it's a harder season to make cash. And we know after round one, prices, even the $1 million import guys, they went down. And that's very common after round one. So you've got to remember these guys haven't played yet. So, particularly the higher-end guys, the higher-priced guys, they're likely to lose cash. If you can wait a couple of weeks, I think we're going to get them at cheaper prices. So for me, the only one I'm really considering is Randall, obviously based on preseason and the NBA games. But he's probably the only guy, mainly because I'm looking at an SG spot to come in this week as an upgrade. He's really the only one I'm considering. I think with the other guys, we can wait a couple of weeks and get him at a cheaper price.
Really like his dual position eligibility. Got it. The little flag with Randall, I think we'd all agree, is that he's a scorer.
Yep.
Doesn't really facilitate or get on the boards that much in our more congested NBL game, I'd suggest. So, but certainly he'd be the one on the radar for me as well. Moving on to the other NBL fantasy news.
NBL fantasy news.
All right. Now, we have been, flagging this, and Joe Chi, you may, for those newbies out there, hear us calling the cheese, or the big cheese, or the cheese platter, or something along those. Cheese and sauce, maybe?
Cheese and whiskers?
And see. You've watched too many kids' shows now. And he was interviewed, and I've got a clip. Here is what he said about his prospects for playing on the court on Saturday.
我觉得我会啊，因为我今天提前到，就是在准备这个周六的比赛，然后通过这几天训练吧，然后希望就是这几天里边可以跟大家有一个好的磨合。
Moving on.
Need an adjudication on who to trade in this week? How about a ruling on who to sit or start? Let's see who submitted their case for judgment in the fantasy full court.
I do have a translation. I just wanted to see if I can get a little reaction. I'm pleasantly happy. He said, I think I will. That's why I came back a few days early to jump on the court and make some chemistry happen. And we've got lots of questions about Cheese, so we'll get on to them. If either of you want to read them out.
I'll take it, Benny. So there's quite a few. Let's read them out in one big hit. So Pete Stone said in with the Cheese back in town for next round, how many minutes will be squeezed out for Sauce, which is Williams? And what will he score fantasy-wise going forward? Is he a hold or fold? Charlie Horse, do we hold Sauce one more week to try and squeeze a little bit more cash out of him before Chi plays quality minutes? It's a common theme here. And from Bucks, is it worth holding Sauce's cover and wait and see what impact Chi has? And then Ballabet, will Chi go straight in and get the same game time? So pretty common theme. We can probably bunch that into one simple question.
It's all about cheese and sauce.
Before we move on, though, just obviously we deliver the champagne comedy here and dad puns, but it's good to see some champagne dad puns coming back to us, I guess. So
it is
shout out to
very nice.
Just a bit of squeezing and a bit of saucing and all sorts of things coming through those questions. I like it a lot.
Yeah, we definitely get yours read out. And these questions, of course, come on our Discord chat, which you can sign up for as little as $1 per month. And we reached out to Mick Randall, and he subsequently tweeted confirming that Chi will play. He's a little underdone and will be brought along slowly. He will play this weekend, though, fellas. So, are we all Source owners? Alan Source Williams owners?
We are all Source owners.
We are.
I just thought I'd jump onto www.basketballblokes.com and jump
Please
into
do.
resources game logs to check out Joe Chi. Now, for those familiar with him, obviously we knew how he was about, but we've got some new players, some new listeners out there. So
Please do.
averaged 36.42 over the season for NBL 22. Now, he had some highs. He had a 79, a 74, a 71, so that's 3 games over 70 over the course of the season. But he obviously did have a couple of games that were lower, dragging that down. But it's all going to depend on how he gets used, I reckon.
Absolute roller coaster, wasn't it?
It was.
It was.
Now,
Even as a Phoenix supporter, it was a roller coaster.
Yes. Now, people have been complaining when Banksy put the tweet up about make you rage trades. We had Jeppa mention that he couldn't trade out Simon Mitchell. He's obviously not a fan of how he uses his players. I think he had Anticevic at the time. But
I think the rage trade tweet was mine, actually, Benny. Before you put the
even in
tweets with his
COVID,
names.
what a warrior! What a
Trying.
warrior.
I look like
Well done.
Shizen, but I'm trying.
Yep. So this will be on YouTube if you want to see Boydie's post-COVID glow.
I have spent at least an hour and a half in the makeup chair for this.
You look like you've had a fresh cut, to be honest.
Yeah, I did give myself a buzz cut too because I was just I kind of felt like death, wasn't it? Yeah, but anyway,
Well,
That'll happen. So what are we planning to do with Source? I guess I'm keeping, just in a word. What are your initial plans?
he's out.
I'm looking to hold. Oh, he's out. Do you know he's only 13% owned? It feels like the three of us, along with the rest of the Patreon chat, actually own him, but it seems that no one else does. 13% ownership is quite surprising. But for me, he went up 85k this week, and to put that in context, there was only one guy, which was Junior Madut, that went up the full 100k. So 85k increase is right up there with what is possible at the moment, and you would expect with the scores we saw over his double that even if he has a moderate game this week on the single, he's still going to see another round of increase there. So that's the main reason I'm hoping to hold him, upgrade someone from my bench and bench him for the week, and at least get an extra week to see what unfolds at the Phoenix once Cheese is in the mix.
Yeah, the schedule is pretty handy coming up. A little bit of news now. I don't know if this helps or hinders our decision, but last week there was some serious doubt whether Williams would play the second game on Olgan and Kane's podcast. They actually thought he was out. He was going to miss. But essentially the Phoenix said, we need him out there. So people have been getting stuck into Simon Mitchell on our Discord chat because we saw what happened with Joe Chi last season, and then he plays barely 20 minutes a game.
Yep.
Williams is seriously I guess he's underdone, but he was under some duress last game and still managed to do what he could do. With Chi playing, I honestly don't think his minutes will reduce from what we've been getting now. Like, he hasn't been playing many minutes, so that's the positive. I'm going to hold and see what it looks like. At the worst, we'll hopefully get a little bit more cash squeezed out of the Source, as everyone has said. I think that's it. The other thing that I guess a segue to the next question then is, if we're going to keep Source, can we have him as little saucy singles? And speaking of singles, the next questions are all about singles. Bordy, are you right to read those out, mate?
Yeah, I just thought I'd quickly mention on Alan Williams, Source Williams, 25, 23 and 23 minutes so far in each of his games. So it's not like he's playing bulk minutes to get those scores. He's not playing 30 plus. So Cheese might take more Dame Pinot's 14 to 18 minutes a game, and even Tahi Smith-Milner's playing sort of 2 and 4 minutes when he does play. So there's still some minutes to go around there. So one to keep in your back burner. Singles.
Can I ask you too? as
Please do.
fellow Phoenix supporters and members. I haven't, to be honest, watched much of the Phoenix game. So have we seen Dane Pineau and Williams on the court at the same time, or has
Briefly.
Dane pretty much been just playing the backup minutes behind Williams as it
Briefly,
stands? And
they were in that last game, but not for very long. And as a Phoenix owner, Phoenix fan,
something
John Wall over here.
Sorry.
Dante Exon.
It was kind of annoying me because there was definitely in that game the other day, they got a run on. I can't remember who we were playing, but they got a run on and we had no offense. We could not score, and with Dane on the court, and yes, he probably adds a little bit more in defense, but they were scoring at will kind of thing, and we weren't scoring at all. And Source comes on, and Source gets the ball in his hands in offense and makes things happen. He can pass.
Yeah.
He's actually a really good passer. And I feel like when if Pineau and Tarangi on the court at the same time, Adnam and Creek at the moment are just basically keeping the ball in offense and dribbling and then driving, and then that's it. And it doesn't work really well because all the other opposition team are doing is double teaming, triple teaming in the key. It's not going. There's going to be no shots going in doing it that.
And
so, whereas
that's the
Source brings in, he adds a lot more to the offense, so it's a bit disturbing.
That's the key for me as well, though, that knowing that Dane really hasn't been playing alongside Williams, I just think if he's been playing mostly the backup minutes, well then, for me, I think it's pretty simple. Cheese will get eased in, he'll take up all of Dane's minutes, and I don't think, at least in the short term, that Source is going to suffer too much with his fantasy points. If anything, as mentioned, by Mick Randall, he might be able to come in and be a bit more aggressive in those 20 minutes he's playing, and I just don't think it's going to affect his fantasy score in the short term.
Dare I say it? Simples, Banksy.
No, it's an inside joke. Come on, mate. Singles.
Singles is not simples. Singles. Is it worth
Indeed.
holding on to Cotton, maybe, that would meant to be, for the singles starting or on the bench, and Plug and Matty Plug and Matty? How do we say that again? I can't remember. Same question for Travers. LT, the big LT.
So the Perth guys, they've got
The Perth guys.
back-to-back singles now.
So Cotton is too expensive to hold.
Agreed.
In my opinion. If you can bench him, that's fine. That's a lot of money on the bench. With two singles coming up. That's kind of how I feel about Cotton.
And the one thing I'd bear in mind with Cotton, yes, he had that 91 in that first game against Brisbane, who do appear to be sort of leaking fantasy points a little bit, based on our... they're not too bad. No, they are pretty bad.
He's not likely to do that again anytime soon.
Well,
that was historic.
He might pop up and do it soon, but I was just saying more likely his scores going to be around those two next scores, which were 33 and 44, in the same, very similar minutes, like 35, 34, 34 minutes he's played in the three games. So, yes, he's going to have a 91 every now and then, but most of his games are going to be in that 33 to 44 sort of zone, let's say 33 to 50, I'd say. So with me, if you have to keep him, I think you just have to play the percentages. So if he's only on a single, whereas you've got someone, such as, I don't know, at the moment, if you've got, let's say Doyle, Doyle's averaging 38, so he's on a double, so he should get around, you'd be hoping around 75, something along those lines.
I need that old Boydie's calculator drop.
I beg your pardon?
I need the old Boydie's calculator drop.
Yeah, the old calculator drop. I've lost all train of thought.
That's right. We got the point. That's all good.
But can you keep him? You can. It's probably going to cost you. Well, it's going to cost you a lot of money. And I would only be at worst doing it this week if you've got some major issues, such as a Sean Thomas sitting in your starting lineup, probably.
And you can do so much more with that extra money. I mean, there's so many SGs that you can be bringing in with a good schedule, like Tucker.
For example, this week you could slide AC Cleveland in this week. You could bring him in straight away.
Yep, McDowell White. So there's so many guys at basically half the price almost that you can be bringing in that even if they score less on average than Cotton, because they're on the doubles, they're going to score the same, if not more, and you can do so much more with that extra cash freed up.
And for me, Travers can be held on to. It's only $1 million. He's making money.
I have him, and I'll be
dual
sliding him onto
positions.
the bench. Yeah, I slide him onto the bench for the next couple of weeks and make use of him there until he pops out again on the double. And when they start,
few weeks.
We've got a couple of doubles come round 5. And I'll pretty
don't
much
think
be
you
doing that
need
all
to be-
season with Travers because, as we've heard in the predictions pod, I think he will be the fantasy MVP.
I don't think you'd need to start Travers on a single. There's plenty of options there as well. Bucks has asked, though, in general, which players do you think can be started on a single? Just in general, I think you want someone who's going to average 40 plus, but I wouldn't be holding a starter that's going to play 2 weeks in a row without cover on a single. I'll be looking to trade out them. Have you guys got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think the only one you'd kind of be looking at the moment, really, is probably, as you said, the guys that are averaging those higher scores. So, they're not on singles, so it's kind of hard to tell. But Cooks, DeWalt, and maybe Cotton, if they've got one, you could play them maybe. But it means that you've. I mean, if you've got only a 250k that's only scoring single figures on your bench, then you might have to start them. But ideally, this part of the season, you would want your schedulers are working well, that you're not have to rely on those guys to play too many singles, I would think.
And I think as the season goes on, I think another one you'll add to that list of potentials to play on a single will be your boy Pinder. He is looking at averaging 50 plus this season. He's another one you could add to that list.
Does look very good, I agree.
I wonder if this man will be on that list. Get low. me and Rob Love had a good... No, he won't be on the list, but we do have some questions about Rob Lowe. Is he a legitimate trade target for Aquera? And do we have faith in him maintaining his mid-20s average? Banksy, thoughts?
He's honestly
Aquera owner.
He's honestly not one I had previously considered, but then we got all these questions that had me looking. So he's played the 2 games so far, scored the 21 against Melbourne, the 32 against the Jack Jumbers, who are obviously quite hard to score against, and now he's got the schedule. So he's proving to be a cash cow that, let's be honest, we personally missed as such. I know that Liam highlighted it in our podcast together, but he's now up 88k. And 66k last round, so he is proving to be a cash cow. It's hard to argue.
Yeah,
minutes are a concern.
Yeah, minutes are a concern for me. Only played 19 and then 13 in the second game for them, but did put up some decent scores with those 13 minutes as well.
He's one of the top points per minute players that we've got going at the moment, so he's fantasy.
If you had access to our stats, you would see that, yes. But he's a no from me. But I do have a little bit of bias in there, maybe.
Okay, yeah, I do like the dual position ability. Is something that stands out to me as well.
Look, he's going to get minutes, so if you need to just chuck a cheap one on the bench, do I like him better than Aquera, which is one of the questions in there? Yes, I do. I would probably rather spend up a little bit more for Lowe than Aquera, to be honest, because Aquera at Melbourne's got Barlow. It looks like he's playing minutes as well, sort of in that 4 or 5 spot. He's got Caroline there, obviously. He's got the hump there, obviously. I think with the hump gets fitter. He plays more, unless they maybe do something there. There's a bit of talk around. Do we talk about that a bit later, Benny, or not?
Oh, we'll just talk about it now. There is some general discussion going around today that United are looking... Well, look, you've had Olgun and Liam suggest that they need to make a change. They already had tried to get Joe Chi. That was confirmed. So they are looking to change the mix, which is why I'm a little bit concerned about getting many Melbourne players at the moment.
Yep. But I won't get away from the question being about Rob Lowe. But yeah, I prefer Rob Lowe over Aquera at this stage.
All right. So speaking of Rob Lowe, we've got the question about New Zealand guys in general. Who wants that one?
Yeah, I'll go
Brad.
for it. Hey?
Okay.
All right, should we be worried about the output from NZ players, Pardon, Brown, Willie McDowell, White, after their game against Tassie, or were lower fantasy scores just a result of a lower scoring style of Tassie games and the pressure of playing at home for the first time in years? Modi Maor flagged this as a pretty serious in the post-game. We have the benefit of having access to the advanced stats, which we compile. And
I'll just run it through. I've just received that email, so if you haven't, make sure you check that email. And Bordy put it together again this week.
Mm-hmm.
So Tassie this season again. So far they're the second hardest team to score against behind Perth.
Yep.
Now that's a big gap. You were saying, Bordy.
There is a big gap to Perth,
Okay.
by far and above the best or the hardest to score against fantasy points wise. But New Zealand are second, and again there's a big gap after them. So
Yeah. So this is a repeat of what we saw from last season, right? So Tassie were the hardest team to score against last season. You got to remember in those stats so far that we've had an overtime game as well, which doesn't get factored in. So they should be even a bit closer to Perth, you'd imagine. And they played Cairns, who went absolutely berserk shooting the ball in that one game, and they put up a 295. So for perspective, they're conceding 221. Take that 295 to something a bit more towards the mean, and then they're looking really, really good. So in general, this is one of the benefits of advanced stats. These trends will hopefully continue to, I guess, give us some insight.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not too concerned about New Zealand as a result of that. I kind of agree that playing Tassie would be difficult to score against.
Yeah, I mean, that Tassie the game is based all around defence, which is what we saw last year as well. Just actual game now, I'm not talking just fantasy. So I think we'll continue to see that. They look like they're very much going to be focused on that moving forward.
They play deep into the shot clock as well, don't they? So less possessions means less fantasy scores.
Yep. The one worrying thing I would say about NZ, because Brad Us's question was more about NZ, is there... Man, we're only 2 games in, so it's really hard to tell, but I'm just worried about the sporadic sort of scoring. So, for example, a couple of names mentioned there. You mentioned McDowell White had a 57 in the first game, but only had a 14, although we now know that there may be a little bit of an injury cloud there. Brown Jr. had the 39, but then he dipped down to a 30. Not a huge difference. Pardon was probably the biggest one there. 64 down to 24 against the JJ.
Still 34 minutes played, though. He's getting everything
lots of
he
minutes.
wants, so I'm not concerned at all.
Yep. But it just might be, but they've got that run of doubles coming up now, so you might just have to take that in hand. Pardon might have a 64, but then he might have a 24, for example. But it's still going to give you, 100, it's going to 80, 90-ish over a double. So just something to keep in mind.
Beautiful. Next little bit is all about trading players out. Fairzy, another good little pun here. Rage trade, rage on, or not. I'm a Rage On owner, and I'm actually not too disappointed, to be honest. I'm quite comfortable with him at the moment. Bordy, what's your situation with Tucker?
Yeah, I am keeping him also. I'm not too worried either. He's missed a ton of shots, which he's dropped points on. He had a bunch of turnovers in the last game as well but he's playing against Sydney now. That doesn't get any better because they play Perth and then Tassie this round. But I think he's one that's looking like he kind of really hasn't hit his straps yet. The thing I did like about Tucker's game on Sunday, had 8 rebounds, 3 assists and 2 steals. So he's getting sort of stuff all around he's getting those stats around all over the place. Just needs that shot to start hitting a little bit better, and I think he will be a little bit better.
Thanks. As someone who doesn't own him, are you going to bring him in, or how are you feeling about him?
I was going to say that. I'll go one better. I'm a non-owner, and I'm actually looking at trading him in this week. I mean, let's face it, the game is schedule-based, and Melbourne have by far and beyond the best schedule out of any team from this round going forward over the next 10 weeks. So, particularly with his eligibility of being a shooting guard or a small forward, I like that. But look, I don't think we've seen the best from Melbourne. I think we're going to see a much better showing this week. I mean, they're not going to play Sydney every week. They got absolutely pantsed last round. Let's be honest. It wasn't just him. It was the whole Melbourne squad. No one had a decent fantasy score there at all, and the game was over by half-time. So, yes, they play Perth, and yes, they play Tassie, but I don't think Vickerman's going to tolerate another game like that. I think we're going to see a different Melbourne squad over the double.
Yeah, just need to zoom out a bit looking at that schedule for Tucker, I think. Next question is for the man that beat me in 2 leagues, Spacey. He's asking about George King. He wants to know if this sub-30 average is about standard, or can he head to that 40-plus sort of mark? So I did not catch this game, fellas. I really need your insight on this.
I watched this game. Don't know if you did, Boyd, but
Yep.
King started on the bench again, even with Robinson out. I remember back in the Blitz, there was only the one game that King played. That was the last game of the Blitz. Robinson was rested that game, and I think we saw a 40-point fantasy outing from King without Robinson, so this was the first in-season game without him. Come off the bench, but he come out on absolute fire. He literally walked up the court and hit 3 basically back-to-back rainbow threes that all hit, scored 25 points, and actual points, and he was the reason that Illawarra were actually leading a lot of that game against Perth as well. But the problem was he didn't hit the other stats that we have seen him, in spades hit in the other games. He only had the 2 rebounds, but zip when it come to assists, steals, and blocks. So he didn't add any of those defensive numbers there. So I would be very tempted to look at him with Robinson out. I think that's only a small sample size, but he was all Illawarra really had in the in the points column the other night, aside from Lockie Dent. I would like to have another look at him, but I'm seriously considering him. And if it wasn't for their schedule, if they had more doubles down the stretch there, he's definitely a guy I consider bringing in. I think he will eventually hit those other stats.
Boydie.
Yeah, look, he's only getting in scoring and 3 points at the moment, really. And a few turnovers. I think he probably would be better with a point guard there I think. Yeah, so it's kind of...
Saying Lockie Dent's not a good point guard.
Oh, no. He's going all right, Lockie Dent. But, yeah, I just think maybe not for me at the moment. And schedule's probably coming into that. If you're an owner already, I wouldn't be too worried about getting him out unless if you've got other more important issues, basically. I think you can sit him there.
Yep.
You got the double this week. You can have another look at him. And then see how it goes from there. And
they did. You've got to remember they played Perth in Perth, and he still scored 25 points in the actual game. So
it's impressive to me.
Yep.
General trade target sort of questions from Nick Turner, sitting nicely up in the top 25. I think our man Nick Turner, former top 3 fantasy coach. I think he actually finished runner-up in 1 year. So just the top 3. Can we give him an order? Banksy, do you want to mention any of your Kings? I think they're a given.
Well, I think based on what we saw last week, X is almost the must-own over the next 2 weeks because of the doubles for Sydney. I think he answered the question marks we had over him last week. So yeah, for me it's X and DeWald if you don't have him in your side. Outside of that,
Derek
I
Bolton
guess.
Jr.
Yeah, that's sorry, nicknames there again. I think the other King, Simon, shown that he's definitely not must own. It's more those other 2 big guys there. And then I think we've got to look towards the schedule, don't we? With Melbourne and New Zealand, and next week we're probably going to be targeting the Adelaide guys, or the week after, I should say. So I don't know if there's a standout third target there. What are your thoughts?
There's no real standout Melbourne player to have at the moment. Structurally, Humph is interesting to me still. Tucker has been a little bit disappointing, but I'm still holding that faith. Illy's potentially back next round, so you wouldn't go XRM. New Zealand is where I'm focusing my attention this round in my Destiny trade. But, yeah, Kings would be the priority over those for me as well.
Yeah, I think the Kings guys, as you mentioned, one that you did not mention is Suarez. I'm an owner, so I don't need to bring him in. But I didn't mind him at least in the second game.
Double-double?
That's right. He had a 53 in that game alongside Cooks, who had the 52. So actually
9 rebounds.
The Cookie Monster.
9 rebounds for a very long time.
Yes. So yeah, I don't mind Suarez either. But yeah, I think you really got to be looking at. It's hard. The NZ guys, there's like 4 there that I think are maybe worth a punt. You've got McDowell White. You got Brown Jr. I really like Jarrell Brantley. I've got him in my side. I have since round 1, and did salute, thankfully, this week with a 41 or whatever he had. And Pardon's the other one. Had that 64, obviously, in round 1. So there's some names there. I'm a bit scared that they're just going to pop up, but only 1 or 2 might pop up a game, and it might not be the same ones every time. But over the course of, what have they got? 3 doubles in a row now.
6
3
and 7.
doubles and a single, then 3 doubles. So we've got 6 doubles in the next 7 rounds. You'd think those guys, if you bring one in, they're going to pop up around them at that time. Melbourne, like the boys said, a little bit scary, but their schedule's just elite. So if you can pick a winner there, well done.
Do you know what I love about this answer? Is there's no clear-cut answer this season. It just feels like a bit of an open field, an even spread, less vanilla teams, and we've all got our own opinions. We're all looking at different guys to trade in. I actually really am enjoying this season.
The benefit of 18 rounds.
Exactly. And such
23 or whatever we've had.
Yeah, and such an even spread with the doubles. There's not as many triples, particularly early in the season. So we're just seeing different teams from team to team, and there's no clear-cut answers, particularly at this point of the season, which is awesome.
All right. Banksy, you should read the next question out.
Trade-ins for the shooting guard was my actual question, and something I'm still contemplating. So I was interested to hear from you two in Tucker versus Randall versus Brown. You can add McDowell White to that mix as well, but I'm already an owner. I have him sitting on my point guard bench. But how would you rank those first 3 particularly, and maybe add Beamer into the mix for those that don't own him?
Well, I'm a bit worried about McDowell White with what we've heard, but I would probably almost have him as 1, and then Tucker 2, Randall. I don't mind Brown's game, actually. I might go Brown 3 and then Randall 4, because, I mean, we did see him ace that game over in the NBA game, but Randall still feels like a little bit of a wild card for me. It feels like a bit of a punt. And look, I'll be honest, I have had him in my side already today with trades, but I'm not sure he will be there, and he's not there at present, and I'm not sure he will be there come the start of the round, but I kind of like the randomness of Randall, pardon the pun.
You know what? I'm exactly in line with you. William, McDowell White, Beamer. In this number 1, they're the same people, just for the record. Tucker, Randall, and then... Brown, then Randall. Just want to look at Randall, and Browns can rack up the steals and whatnot. So moving away from the guard decisions, the bigs, and Banksy, the bigs finally came back. We talked about that in the captains episode last week. Just on captains, while I'm thinking about it, this will be the last captains podcast that will be available to everyone. After that, it's going to our Patreon supporters. It is new and improved, and I've got some little improvements again, I think, for this podcast. So make sure you check out Banksy's Captains podcast, and we'll continue to work on it. Hopefully provide a bit of good entertainment value, as well as just cracking captain's advice. But the bigs bounce back this week, and Wolski asks, Pardon v Brantley v Suarez, same person, who knows, and Jordan Caroline. So, Boydie, what are your thoughts on those, mate?
I like Suarez. I have him in my side.
Over Pardon, you've said that
so I guess
multiple
I'm
times.
probably biased from both those two guys. And then I'd probably go Pardon and then Caroline last.
Caroline was specifically mentioned by, as a, I've heard it a few times now, as a cut date candidate. So I'm scared off Caroline altogether, despite his nice little double-double that he had last game. And yeah, for me it's Pardon, Suarez, Brantley, Caroline. Banksy?
Exactly the same.
Cool. Cash cows. Who wants that one?
Jace has asked us top 3 cash cows going into round 3.
That's Jace with a $sign in the name as well. Gotta love that, asking about cash cows. We know where his mindset is at.
He's even got the logo to match.
Don't mind
So
it.
cash cows, we're not... Obviously, our $1 million guys are making us money, but we're not talking at that price point.
Yep.
We're looking at the cheapies as far as cash cows goes. Obviously, Wardenberger is the crappiest one. You just got to get rid of him. I'm sick of him. Get rid of him. No, in reality, fellas,
Don't
straight.
be like
He'll be looking
that.
at.
Yeah,
Don't be
don't
like that.
I don't mind the Wardenberger.
I think at half time, I was thinking we've nailed our cash cows on the cheat sheet. Obviously, we know what happened in the second half against Perth, but I was thinking great things. I thought we were right on track with Wardenberg following the first half, and it was good to see the minutes he played in the first half as well. So I'm holding Wardenberg.
Yeah, honestly,
I-
he's a season-long prospect.
Yeah.
If you want to, if you can work it with your fixture.
And I was just having a look how many minutes he played. Almost 26 minutes last night. So that's better than we can say for some of the cash cow bench guys we've got floating around at the moment on our teams.
So the one went up by 100k this week. What
Junior.
comes to mind?
So
The
Madut's the
only,
one that's
the only
everyone's
guy
talking
that
about.
went up.
That's right. The other one that's everyone's talking about at the moment is obviously Lockie Dent. And he's getting minutes obviously with Robinson out now, and he's put up some good scores, 25 and then 32 in their most recent game against Perth. So he's another one that you'd think, because he's still very cheap. I think he's 419k, so he'll still keep going up. Madut's still keep going up at this stage. The red flag with him is the Trey Cal is back. Rowdy Brokoff is back this week, according to Semp and the media. So you might see a reduction in Madut's minutes. That would be the red flag there. But I think with his scores, I think he's still going to keep going up.
Can we touch on him while we're there? Like, I know that some people are pretty keen to get him out with all these red flags, but, I mean, you guys are Phoenix fans. Has he not played well enough to basically get those minutes? I mean, I think he's been amazing, to be honest, watching those Phoenix games. Have been low on guys, and he's been a standout performer in the parts of the games that I have seen for the Phoenix.
Well, I put this run
I think
sheet
the problem
together,
is
and I
he's
do
playing-
so in a way
He's averaging
that's
30 minutes. So,
planned.
Pardon me?
Right? So I put this run sheet together, and I do it in a way that's planned. So Nathan Verney's question was exactly what you asked. Okay, so his plans were to always jettison Madut, but given the injured players returning, do we reconsider this given his performances? So thank you for the question, Nathan and Banksy. Bordy, you can carry on with your answer, mate. Sorry, I've buggered you
averaging
up
30
there.
minutes a game. I'm not sure he's going to get the 30 minutes. He might still get 20 this round, bearing in mind they're only on a single this round, if I'm right. Yep. Look, he might only get 20 minutes this week, and then 20 minutes, because when they need some minutes for Rowdy, they need some minutes for Trey Cal. So I think his minutes will go down. Will he still be making or getting good enough scores to get a bit of a price rise? I think he might.
Let's do this using the advanced stats. You've got points per minutes there.
Yep.
Let's say he gets his 20 minutes. When everyone's back, I think he's more 15. But if he's getting 20 minutes, what's his points per minute been so far?
His points per
Because
minute
then
around
the-
about 0.85.
0.85. So 20 minutes, if he's going consistently, you're looking at about
16, 17.
16 points per game. Not
Correct.
great. So,
No.
like I'm trading him out this week just because I can do a Destiny trade.
Yep.
I think it's sort of more 40 or 50k increments, dropping down to about 20k increments for Madut. But
Yeah, so 16, 17 points will kind of get you around about that $500 grand mark, probably somewhere around there, 455. So he's almost at price, basically, if you're looking to squeeze any more money out of him, possibly. Not knowing exactly what the herbs and spices are.
Well, the first game was against Tassie. That's when he scored the 15. So not knowing the herbs and spices, you think his more recent games are going to be in that rolling scores that determine his increase, and the double saw him score 41 and 23. So I think we've got at least another decent squeeze in him this week for cash production. So if you can, I'm probably going to hold him on the bench for one more week and get that increase, because as we saw, he's the only guy that went up 100k. So it's looking like a season where it's going to be harder to make cash than normal.
They play NZ twice. Sorry, Sem. Yeah, that's right. Sem play NZ. Both their two next games are both against NZ. Interestingly enough.
There you go. Perfect question, I think, from Marco about trusting Hump on the double this week or riding him on the bench. I was considering Sauce Williams down to Humphreys, but I'm going against that as it stands at the moment. Banksy, what were your plans with Hump?
My plans were to actually have him as an upgrade in this week with the cash I've got in the bank, depending on how my benches went, and therefore I was planning to get a Quera up to Humphreys to start the Melbourne schedule. And fading him at the start of the season, I was really worried because I knew a lot of people were on Hump. But I thought I'd be paying a premium for him come round 3, and I think he might even have lost cash, has he, overall? He definitely hasn't gone up, that's for sure. So
negligible, yeah.
But I think, I don't know, it's a scary one, because if I bring him in, I'm going to play him on the double. There isn't, I don't think, an absolute standout centre on the double. Maybe Boydie's onto something. Probably Suarez is probably the pick of the bunch, followed by Pardon. But outside of that, yeah. But outside of that, I mean, that was my plan, to bring him in so I could bench Sauce for the single, hold on to him for another week, and just have a look at what's going to go on at the Phoenix now Cheese is there. But yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit worried with Hump playing Perth in Perth, and also playing Lockdown Tassie, who don't give up fantasy numbers. So it's a little bit of a worry. I don't know if I'll still go there, but interesting one.
We do have a Hump owner. Boydie, what are your plans with him?
He's coming. I might start him, but he might stay on the bench. I'm not sure yet.
All right.
It depends on so many depends on so many things. If I get some news on Tayshaun Thomas, I might slide him off to the bench and play Isaac this week. It's kind of a little bit all over the shop. I don't like the opponents that Melbourne have got. They play Perth in Perth, and then they play Tassie at home. So yeah, we talked about earlier in this pod. They're the two hardest team to score fantasy points against. So it's a big red flag for any Melbourne United players there, by the way.
One thing I did pick up, that we have to mention is if your boy Tayshaun is out, Perth are very thin in the big man department, and we saw even in an absolute thumping that Cairns experienced from Perth last night, the bigs still did well. Pinder, I think, put up 60 fantasy points. He still found his numbers even in an absolute shellacking. So something to take into account. Yes, Melbourne are playing Perth, but depending on that injury front for Perth, maybe it is a good matchup for Hump.
Great point, mate. You started to answer these next questions as well, Banksy, from Plug-in Matty and Lato, who are looking for the best centre eligible options on the double. You mentioned Suarez. I think you might have mentioned Pardon. Is there anyone else on the double at centre that we like this week? Or are those just a clear top two?
I think that's it. There's not a lot to look at.
I wouldn't pay for Franks.
No.
I had another Destiny trade with Franks in the equation, but that's... So I think that this kind of...
Sam Froling, a name that you've talked about?
No, he wasn't mentioned, so Samson is a good one. Yeah, I think that's
obviously not setting the world on fire just yet, but they're on the double.
Which kind of makes me feel like Humph is playable, because look at the competition, right? So that's something else to consider when you're making that decision. Watto's Wisdom, he's after players that have got less than 500 ownership. So he's got King as well, and he's thinking he might have to trade him out. But let's give some unique options, fellas. So obviously, I'm going to exclude the Adelaide guys, right? They are all unique as far as that goes. They are obviously, we've done them to death, I think, so far on this podcast. I want to go first. Someone that I'm looking to bring in with 70 fantasy coaches currently owning him, including our boy Bordy, is Jarrell Brantley.
Like it.
So that's my candidate. So you got any more, fellas?
Bordy surely has to pick his Sydney Kings centre there. Surely. Very unique.
So only that's a good point.
Well, I've already got him, so I'm not going to mention him, am I?
I know, but this is for Watto, not for you.
Yeah. Unfortunately, they've got a crap schedule, but one that's very under-owned at the moment, but he's putting up decent numbers is Shannon Scott, the point guard at Perth. Point guard at Cairns.
Shannon Scott Machado.
So he's had a 50, 58 and a 33 against Perth, which is obviously his down game. But the thing I like from him is he's playing decent minutes, 32, 29, 28. Even though he's not starting, he seems to come on and pretty much take over that point guard role from Tahir McCall, who usually starts with that gig in the Cairns roster. So he's playing plenty of minutes. He gets points all over the shot. Don't mind him as a bit of a unique, but it's so hard. There's so many other options at that point guard position, and the Cairns schedule is a bit yuck.
And I guess to finish off Watto's question as well, I was indicating there, Bordy, your centre at the Kings, Suarez, 3% ownership. So if you're looking at a unique, particularly with that, the thinness of the centres on the double this week, that is a good unique option. And obviously Pardon, who we've discussed, he's only at 7% ownership. Only 404 people own him as it stands.
Excellent. Good doing the deep dive. I like that, Scott. Comment. Some start sits to finish us off from Tice. We've got to pick 3 to start and 2 to sit out. Do we have to answer this one? Actually, it's McDowell, White, Simon, Tucker, McVeigh, Randall. Have we? I think we've kind of actually. There's a couple of new names in there. So,
yeah.
Who do we've got to start 3? Who are your favourite 3 out of those? So, I think we're going to all sit Randall. Can we all agree on that?
Yeah.
I think so.
I'm not convinced,
I think so.
But yeah, you'd like to have a look at him first.
Yeah, I'd like to have a look at him. Hang on, 3.
Simon and Tucker are the 2 obvious ones. Simon and Tucker.
Yeah. Look, I'd be waiting on McDowell White news. I'd want to hear clean bill of health. Then I'd be okay with him. The 2 that I'd sit would be Randall and
McVeigh.
I wouldn't say Simon, because I don't think he actually did that well in their last game.
I love their matchup. I absolutely love the Kings matchup for Simon this week.
Yeah.
They play Cairns and Brisbane.
Yeah, that's not. Yeah, you probably.
We know what McVeigh's going to score. He's going to score 38 to 40 fantasy points.
That's it. He's going to score 70 to 80 over the double. So, maybe McVeigh's that one, the odd man out, gets pushed out if you play Simon. You're right, Banksy. I don't mind those matchups now you've talked to them.
Yeah, and so a bit of a mixed bag from us, but
I've just got a hunch that Tassie might find it a little bit more hard going this week. Adelaide, as we know, they got mouse to feed everywhere. That could be a potential blowout or hard to score against Adelaide, and then they play Melbourne United. I think we'll have a point to prove this week. So 2 away games for Tassie. I think they've played the last couple at home. So.
That first game is going to be it's going to be ride or die. It's going to be Adelaide are either going to be on song from coming back from the US on a bit of a high after beating Phoenix, etc. Still, even though it's more than a week since then, or they could just be jet lagged. They could be terrible, smaller court. Tassie could just strangle them and they might not do anything. It could go either way, that game on Thursday night. It's going to be very interesting.
Last one, Banksy, you're a Rashard Kelly owner, so we're going to add this to the mix. Start, sit, who we starting or ranking? So BMW, Tucker, McVeigh, and we're going to add Kelly to the mix this time from Dylan. You liking Kelly?
It's probably a question that I need to answer myself because I've got 3 of those guys and potentially looking at bringing Tucker in, so I could be an owner of all 4. I would really like some more information around Beamer. We're not going to know, obviously, they don't play the first game, so hopefully he's okay, but I think he's, out of those guys, probably got the biggest ceiling. As we know we get from McVeigh, and Tucker hasn't set the world on fire, but absolutely love the points per minute from Kelly, and I mean, has Roth finally figured out that Tassie are better with Kelly on the court rather than sitting 3/4 of the game on the bench. So I think there was a bit of an increase in his minutes. So start sit. I don't know how many. I'm guessing he's got to play 2 out of these 3 guys. So for me, it's probably going to be Kelly and McDowell White.
Yeah, Kelly would definitely be in it for me. That's the one thing I'd like to add. Like, he would be in the top, the number one of those guys for me at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, he's the informed guy. He's coming off a 44 and a 51, so a 95 for the round he had. So I'd be starting him over McVeigh was one of those options, wasn't it? Yep. I'd be starting Kelly over McVeigh. Probably Kelly over Tucker as well. Beamer's the interesting one, but I would be wanting some news there, I would suggest.
Well, we tried to rush through it, and it took us an hour and 5 minutes again, but Bordy...
Not too bad.
You've done well in the Manscaped T-shirt there. The former sponsor wearing the old freebies.
Very nice.
So.
I didn't even pick that up.
Doing the swapping of T-shirts twice a day to try and get the germs washed out of everything, mate. As always, you can find us at bball_blokes on Twitter. We are Basketball Blokes on Facebook, or www.basketballblokes.com for all your NBL fantasy information. Until next time, ciao, buongiorno.